Hey guys, this is Fleetgiana96 and I'm here to bring you another pod fic. Today's fic is called It's That Damn Phone by Spilled Ink. This fic is 1,698 words. It's a one-shot, and here's the summary. Midoriya Izuku is a problem all the time. He breaks bones, he attracts villains, he sticks his nose where it doesn't belong, and gets himself hurt, and much, much more. What his teacher doesn't expect is for him to be a problem in class because he was on his phone. Midoriya Izuku, not paying attention in class. Get your umbrellas out, folks. The sky must be falling. This fic is also a little bit crack-ficky. I think that's really the only warning tag I feel like it needs. It's just a silly, fun piece, so I really hope you guys enjoy. Author also eats comments, so please make sure you go over to their AO3 and feed them so that they don't die of starvation. They definitely deserve them. Shota Aizawa referred to Izuku Midoriya as a problem child. Everyone knew this. It was just true. Izuku Trouble Magnet Midoriya was the epitome of a problem. From brushing off grievous injuries to letting himself get injured during training to help his classmates learn or improve. But never, in the months of teaching this boy, had Shota ever come to expect that Midoriya would be a problem for this reason. Midoriya. All eyes turned to the boy, whose hands were underneath his desk and giving his best innocent look like Shota had never taught a classroom of teenagers before. The man held out his hand, still standing at the front of the room, and watched as Midoriya had the audacity to tilt his head like he really had no clue what was going on. Your phone, Bakugo snickered, and Ida adjusted his glasses, obviously already preparing a lecture after class. Midoriya's grin grew sheepish. He stood, approaching the front of the classroom with the device. Shota caught the quick swipe that told him that the boy had cleared his app history, just as the cell phone was placed into his hands, and he accepted it with a nod. Midoriya. The boy glanced up at his teacher, both of them still standing in the dead silent classroom. Care to explain why you, of all people, would be using your cell phone in class? Midoriya's gaze danced nervously away as he stiffened. Smile awkward. Not really, Sensei. I guess I was just kinda into, well, you know. He trailed off with a nervous laugh, hands twisting in the hem of his blazer. Shota sighed. No, Midoriya. I don't know. Stay after class. The teen deflated slightly, but nodded and returned to his seat. The class continued as normal, though Midoriya was noticeably quiet whenever the rest of the class asked questions or shouted out their answers to Shota's lesson on the vigilante laws. Midoriya had aced their pre-test on the topic, so he wasn't worried, though he had to wonder why the teen was so well versed in that particular area of the law. Regardless, at the end of the school day, Midoriya remained in his seat while Shota ushered the rest of his students out with a sharp glare. The classroom empty, Shota beckoned Midoriya forward, and the boy stood, slinging his bag over his shoulder and approaching the teacher's desk. Midoriya, are you feeling all right? The boy's eyebrows jumped, but he nodded quickly. Yes, I'm fine, sir. Then why were you on your phone today? If it had been anyone else, Shota wouldn't even bother asking. Kaminari, Mina, and Sero were all repeat offenders for this particular crime, and he knew it was just because they got bored, or distracted, or lost interest in the lesson. They still traded notes, did their homework, and studied hard, so Shota tried not to hold it against them. Midoriya, however, would never fail to pay attention in his class. He was one of the most dedicated students in 1A. Staring up at the boy, Shota watched his expression carefully, looking for anxiety or fear. Worst case scenario, he was mixed up in some dangerous or ill-intended online group, but he didn't think it was so bad as that. No, he had a feeling Midoriya was just interested in something, and he knew full well the intensity with which the boy attacked anything he was interested in. He watched the boy's face jump between embarrassment and indignation before his shoulders sagged, and he dropped his backpack. He inhaled deeply, and Shota leaned forward, already tensing for the torrential rush of information he was about to receive. So yesterday I was on this website and I found this thing called AI chats. Here, Midoriya took a quick breath. And so of course I looked up a bunch of pro heroes, but he raised one finger, gaze locked on his teacher. When I looked up All Might, I couldn't find anything. Shota was tangentially familiar with AI chatbots. They could theoretically mimic any celebrity, fictional character, or concept and act as a conversation partner. He highly doubted that there were no chatbots of All Might, though. There were probably chatbots for each of All Might's eras, maybe each year of his career. The boy continued. Well, I mean, I found some, but they were wrong. He hissed the word like it burned to say, planting both hands on Shota's desk and leaning forward. Shota resisted the urge to lean back, sarcastically worried his skin would burn in the face of the righteous fury of a true fanboy. He was completely mischaracterized and two-dimensional, even the ones made by supposed mega fans. Midoriya curled his lips into a mocking sneer that sincerely surprised Shota. We're absolute garbage! And I left some comments, all perfectly nice, of course. But then I got a bunch of trolls, and they tried to sound like they knew All Might better than me. Me! Midoriya stepped back to throw his hands up with a laugh, and Shota wondered if he should call Recovery Girl, in case this was a sincere stress-induced break of some kind. So, of course, I had to prove myself, and I've been training an AI I made to sound and act exactly like All Might. Shota sat for a few minutes, staring at Midoriya as the boy mumbled to himself some nonsense about predictive trials as he processed what he'd heard. He finally finished processing the boy's tirade and found a reason to be concerned, as is often the case with Midoriya. Midoriya. Yes, Sensei? Are you making a hyper-realistic AI copy of All Might? Yes, I am. The boy straightened, smiling like this was his pride and joy. It probably was, at that. Midoriya. Exactly how accurate is this AI? Midoriya, impossibly, grew more excited. Sensei, this AI is perfectly accurate. It knows everything about All Might, which is why I have to keep all of its code securely behind every possible firewall and encryption. Shota's gaze flicked up to the camera by the ceiling before returning to his student. Midoriya, I'm sure I don't have to explain why it's dangerous to have a near-perfect AI of Japan's #1 hero. The boy nodded vigorously. Of course, Sensei. It is firmly under lock and key. Right now, I've just been testing it by feeding as much information about All Might's schedule as possible and seeing how it predicts he'll act. Shota paled slightly at the idea of this boy feeding the top hero's personal schedule into an unprofessionally secured algorithm. It's been completely accurate. It can even predict the clothes he'll wear since I uploaded his entire wardrobe. Shota wondered how Midoriya could possibly have access to both All Might's entire schedule and his entire wardrobe. He absolutely did not want to know. This was bad, incredibly bad. An AI that could predict all of All Might's actions, both in and out of his hero persona. And Midoriya was nothing if not thorough. That AI wouldn't just be nearly perfect, it would be perfect. This kid was building a perfect replica of All Might's rational mind. For fun. At least it was in the hands of the world's most dedicated hero fanboy. There was certainly worse geniuses to have stumbled upon this idea. Sighing, Shota reached into his desk drawer and pulled out Midoriya's phone. He held it out to the boy, just as the intercom crackled. Without flinching, Shota reeled back and launched the device at the speaker in the wall, smashing both to pieces. Midoriya's mouth dropped open to stare at the remnants of both devices, now smoking slightly, still embedded in the wall. Shota stood, rounding his desk, and put a hand on Midoriya's shoulder. I'll dig out your SIM card and get your new phone to you by dinner time tonight. When the principal calls you to talk about cybersecurity, you will tell me, and I will be present for any meetings you have with him. Midoriya dragged his gaze away from the sparking electronics to look up at his teacher before nodding slowly, just once. Shota nodded in return and stepped aside, allowing the boy an unobstructed path to the door. He listened for the rustling of his student hefting his backpack and hurrying out of the room as he turned and approached a small electrical fire blooming on the classroom wall. Crisis averted, he thought, with a mental pat on the back as he hefted the nearest fire extinguisher. His work phone had several missed calls by the time he had returned to his desk, surprisingly undamaged SIM card in his possession. Rat God, 4 missed calls. He put both of his phones on silent as he sat down and pulled out his laptop. He'd broken plenty of phones in his career, so he knew this delivery service would have it there within the hour. Both of his phones rang the entire time it took for him to make the purchase, no matter how many times he assured himself they were set to silent. He left them both in his classroom overnight and told his students to send Ida or Midoriya to his dorm if anyone needed help when he dropped off Midoriya's shiny new phone. He went to sleep with a light heart. In the morning, he walked into his classroom and ignored the scorches still gracing the wall around the shattered intercom, in favor of glaring at both Ida and Midoriya, who'd both managed to hurt themselves the moment he left the night before, and didn't see any need in bothering him about it. These damn kids. After class, Midoriya stayed behind once again to sheepishly hand him a note that told him to meet the principal after class. Shota dropped his head into his hands and groaned. Maybe it wasn't the kids. Maybe his boss was just infecting them with his knack of causing problems. At that moment, a thoroughly burnt Kirishima burst through the doors holding a soaking wet Kaminari. No, it was definitely the kids. Shota pointed wordlessly down the hall towards Recovery Girl's office. They sped off, and he stood to escort his worst problem child to meet what was arguably the worst possible influence he could be exposed to. Thank you guys so much for listening to that one. Like I said at the beginning of the fic, the link is in the description of the video. Stop by and leave comments and kudos to the author. We love a chaos gremlin vibe fic. I had a lot of fun recording Izuku's lines on this one, and Shota needs a raise. I don't care what fic you're reading. Generally, he needs a raise. That man deals with so much. Usually when I write him, he ends up dealing with a lot too. Somebody just write a fic where Shota is negotiating a raise of payment, and like he's just using incidences with Izuku getting injured, Ida trying to go vigilante. Like he's just like, I need a raise. This is what I've been dealing with. That would be funny. I'd read that. But yeah. Thank you again so much, Spilled Ink, for letting me read your fic, and I hope you guys really enjoyed that one. Thank you so much for listening. I'll talk to you in the next one.